Hey, how's it going? You know, it's interesting how little things that happen can sometimes remind you of very profound moments. A few days ago, I was walking down the street and I was on my way to get some lunch. And I was standing at the street corner next to this serviceman. He was in the army, you could tell by the patches on his uniform. And while we were waiting for the light to change, someone walked up to him and shook his hand and said, "I just wanted to thank you for your service." And the young man nodded and smiled and said, "Well, thank you." He seemed both embarrassed but also extremely pleased to hear these words from a total stranger. And this reminded me of something that happened a few years ago. I was in the courthouse and I was filing some documents for a lawyer I was working for at the time. And I saw behind the counter a newly hired court clerk. And this clerk looked so much like this young woman I know who lives here in Hawaii, who's from Thailand, that I figured they just had to be related to each other. And the resemblance is so close, she could be my friend's twin sister. So when it was my turn at the counter, I got up there and I handed her my documents and I said, "Hey, by the way, are you from Thailand? Because you look just like this friend of mine who's from there." And she said, "Oh no, I'm from Laos." And I'd never met a Laotian before in my life, but I tell her, "Oh, that's interesting." She asked me, "Have you ever been to Thailand?" It's like, well, I told her no, but my dad's been to Laos. And she asked me when he was there, because there'd be no way he could be there these days, right? And I told her, well, in 1962, he was in the army and he was in the special forces, and the army sent him there to help the mountain tribes who were being attacked by the Vietnamese communists. They were attacking the villages, enslaving the people, and killing them. And the army sent him there to help those people defend themselves against the communist attacks. And he was there 62 and 63, and this is not really a commonly known thing, but if you know anything about our involvement in Laos in the early 60s, you would know that much. So my dad was one of those men. And she became very thoughtful and she said, "Well, is your father still alive?" And I told her, "Yeah, he's retired, living in California." And she then said, "Well, the next time you talk to your father, tell him that I said thank you for what he tried to do for us." And I was at first taken aback because no one had ever told me to tell my dad that before. Um, I said, "Well, thank you," and I'll let him know. So a few days later, I was on the phone with my father, and I told him, "Hey, Dad, something happened like a couple of days ago. I was in the courthouse, and I met this woman from Thailand, and I mentioned that you had she's actually this woman from Laos, and I told her that you'd been in Laos back in the 1960s, and that you were up there helping the Montagnards protect themselves from the Vietnamese communists, and she told me to tell you thank you for what you did." And my father got very quiet, and he was quiet for so long that I thought that he'd either hung up or we got disconnected. And when he got back on the phone, his voice was shaking. And my father was, normally a really tough guy, and he grew up on a ranch. He was a Green Beret, king of the jungle type thing, right? And he said, "Well," he told me, "Well, tell her the next time you see her, tell her I appreciate that very much." And No one had ever told my father that. Ever. He came back home from Vietnam for the last time in 1975. He was there up until shortly before the fall of Saigon. And like many Vietnam veterans, he learned to keep quiet about his service during the war. And as the years went on, and the nation's attitude towards its Vietnam veterans went from either ignoring them or being hostile to becoming more and more accepting of them, and regretting the extraordinarily bad treatment they received on their return. But I try to call my father every year on his birthday, Father's Day, Memorial Day, and Veterans Day. Wish him a happy Veterans Day, because after all, he is a veteran. And I call him on Memorial Day because my father lost a lot of friends in the war. And more in the years since. So the people that he knew from those days are becoming fewer. And I think a lot of us have a Vietnam veteran in our family, or a Korean War veteran in our family, who's never heard the words, "Thank you for your service." And you might be surprised their reaction when they hear it, maybe for the first time ever. And seeing that young man hear it brought back the memory of my father hearing it for the first time from a total stranger. Take care.